keeping up with the series, catching up with former teammates, something that I kind of just thought about one night where I was like, man, I need to reconnect with some of my teammates and talk about our time together and their impact on me. This is the second episode of that. And this is with one of my best friends. He's the best man at my wedding, Brennan Carroll. You know him as potentially the run game coordinator for the Seahawks. He was the recruiting coordinator, tight ends coach at SC when I was there. Also was receivers, recruiting coordinator at the University of Miami. So he's been around epic programs, been around big stages, and he's also been someone really close to me. And now as one of my best friends, I talk to him all the time. I mean, our families are Zooming almost once a week. But I wanted to talk to him and just talk about him as a coach in his profession, because I do think that Brennan is a rising head coach. He interviewed for the University of Hawaii opening this past offseason, and I think he's just getting going. I think as the cycle continues, as it does every late November, December, January in college and the NFL, I think the name Brennan Carroll is going to be one that you'll want to pay attention to, and not just because he's the son of what I think will be a Hall of Fame head coach in Pete Carroll, but he's a really brilliant mind in and of itself. I think he understands offensive football as well as anybody I've been around in my career who's not a head coach right now. He's coached O-line, as I referenced, almost every position on the offensive side. And he's got a great personality, so he knows how to connect to players. So remember the name, but now for Pitt fans, go back in time and go down a memory lane as we catch up with BC or Brennan Carroll. And football fans get to know someone who I will think will be a head coach in the near future in college football.
BC, we met a long, long time ago, and I just want to first and foremost say thanks for coming on.
Yeah, Yogi, what's happening, brother? It was a long time ago. We don't need to talk about how long ago it was, correct?
Exactly to the date, no, but they'll figure it out by the time we get through this interview.
Yeah, there's Google. We're good.
Yeah, so that being said, I have a clear vision, and I don't even know if you remember this, but we were in Sutherland Hall, and if you ever have gone to Pittsburgh, that campus, people know that. If not, it's basically a dormitory. And we were getting new facilities when I came to college. You had already been there. And I came early in the summer. I was a walk-on and didn't know anybody, but just was like, what do you do when you show up on campus? You watch film. So I showed up and I was like, I want to learn stuff. And the first day that I was there, I met you. And you walked in and you were cool, you were loud, just like you were infectious with your energy like you are now as a coach. And I remember that, and it made me relax. And you were the first guy that I met, and I'm curious if you recall that day at all, and if so, anything like I just described.
Okay, I remember that event, but Yogi, I had met you before, and you may not remember this, but I tell this story when people ask me about when I met you. It was on a bus. We're heading to South Oakland to see that new facility, and it was you, and I'm not going to say the names because I'll get them wrong, but it was you and whatever kicker and whatever punter and whatever other young stud walk-on we had coming on the bus. And it was kind of the first day that we got to see like the new guys. Hey, who's going to be on our team this year? You know, the guys that got recruited and came into class. And I remember we're in a big amount of trouble if this is the new squad that we brought on. 4 little dudes. You guys didn't look like world records. You know what I'm saying? So it was. I do remember this other meeting, but for the first time I saw you, I was a little bit concerned. But then it got better.
Yeah, so that was it. I don't know if you remember these guys, but it was J.B. Gibney, kicker.
For sure.
Andy Lee, who might be a Hall of Fame punter, still playing in the NFL. He's entering, I think, his 18th year.
Looks great, too, by the way. Looks great. I saw him this season a couple of times, so he's doing great. Says hi, by the way.
Yeah, he's awesome. We caught up when I had an ASU game earlier this year. But let's rewind it. So we meet at Pitt. You've been around football for a long time, right? Your dad's a lifer, obviously the head coach of the Seahawks, has been coaching forever. When did you fall in love with the game of football?
It was early on. The exact time was probably somewhere in when we were living in Minnesota back in the late 80s. And I can just remember those teams, like the NFC West teams. It was like Walter Payton and the Chicago Bears. We're playing Tommy Kramer of the Minnesota Vikings, and it was pretty cool. It felt like they were big time events, and I can remember watching the games and getting excited about them and cheering for them, and then wanting to do the same thing. So it was early on.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I remember earlier this season I had Matt Hasselbeck, who I know you know, on my podcast, and he talked about being a kid, and he would play on the game field on Sunday mornings, like 7-on-7, which is basically like 2-on-2 with kids when you're like 10 years old. And it'd be like him and Peyton and Eli and all these guys. And he just thought it was normal. So for you, like, did you have like locker room experience where you look back now and you've got, a son who's probably around the program? Did you even recognize what was happening to you at the time? Or do you have a recollection of some of those moments?
I can remember early on because when my dad was coaching the defensive backs at the New York Jets, that's when it kind of clicked in that it was something pretty cool. I remember it was like James Hasty and Ronnie Lott and Brian Washington, those guys. They took me under their wing. It may not have been the best environment for me to to get an education in life skills and stuff like that, but they really took care of me, and that was kind of the first group of guys that really made me aware of that this is something special and it needs to be treated as such.
So did you ever think of a world where you didn't play college football? Like, you played a bunch of sports growing up, you played hoops, you were obviously a good athlete to be able to play D1 football, but was it like, yeah, it's just where?
Well, you got to be wanted by somebody to play college football, which that took a while for, but I knew probably early in high school that's what I wanted to do. There was a kid on my high school team, Harbor Fields High School in Huntington, Long Island, named Ryan Brady. They got a scholarship to West Virginia, and I remember that was pretty cool. And I said, I want to do stuff like that. So, and then I actually wound up getting to play against them one game when we were at Pitt. So that was a cool deal.
Yeah, I asked that because I see a lot of coaches' kids that are like GAs in the Pac-12, and I'm calling games, or you just we've both been in it for almost 20 years now in some fashion, where you just kind of, the last names keep popping up. And usually when I meet like two siblings, like two sons of a coach, very rarely do both of them do the profession. Like, you have that with your brother. Usually like one goes hard left and the other one goes down that road of the profession. Did you have times you were like, man, like, football's like just everywhere, I need to not do it? Or has it just kind of always been like, yeah, this is what I want to be a part of in my life?
For me, when I was playing, I didn't really want to get into coaching. It wasn't my number one goal. It wasn't my number one. I thought I could play in the NFL. There was no shot. I had bad self-aware early on. No shot, Yokes. I appreciate it though. So really, when I got done, I still love the game. When I got done playing college, I did a quick internship with the NFL, working with what is now like Play 60. Way back again, it was HSPD and JPD, Junior Player Development, High School Player Development. That was back in who knows when. But I love the game, so I always kind of wanted to be around it. Didn't want to necessarily get it right into coaching. I say that, and then 6 months later, I'm GAing for USC because it was such a cool time just to be around those teams and that kind of arena in college football. So very, we got to be in the Big East with some great teams, but it just felt like a little bit different than playing out on the West Coast, just in the Pac-10 at the time, and which is currently Pac-12. So it was just a really cool time. And I know my brother Nate, he kind of wanted to be in it the whole way through. He didn't play college football, but as soon as he got done with it, he knew that that's what he wanted to do, get involved in all this.
Yeah, I can remember vividly being at Pitt. Our tight ends coach was a guy named Bob Ligashevsky, right? He was the coach when you were there. And
yes,
you always had this different way that you spoke about the game. And I remember sitting in, like, I knew early on that I had to sit in the quarterback meetings if I wanted a chance, just to learn how they were thinking. I wasn't the biggest, wasn't the fastest, but had to just understand the game at a different layer, different level. I always felt that you had it. Like, you could answer football questions, it felt like in your sleep. Like, did you feel that way? Like, when you got to college and you were playing at Pitt, that you had this world, this acumen that was second nature? Or did you have to really work at it and track a passion that was instilled in you as a kid?
Yeah, I kind of thought I knew what I was doing in college, and I kind of knew our offense a little bit. And then when I got into coaching, I was so wrong. I had no clue what I was doing. I knew kind of the plays I was I was involved in and kind of where I was on the field and stuff like that. But I didn't have a deep understanding at all. And really the cool thing about the sport is that even in year, don't say the number, year whatever we're in right now, I still get to keep learning, and I still get to keep adding on to all the knowledge that's been passed through from Pitt to USC to Miami, all those places. So that's what makes it fun, is that it doesn't get tired, it doesn't wear out. It's always new, it's always changing and evolving. So that's the exciting part about it.
Did you think, like, I remember being at Pitt, right? And we had our rules, and Lou talked about them on the previous episode, right? The signs up, like, love the process. And you know all the signs I'm talking about in the locker room. Yeah. You remember all those things. But I'm curious for you, because I ended up obviously moving out to LA and joining the staff with you. And I remember when I got there, I was like, whoa, this is way different than, love the process and what we're doing at the University of Pittsburgh. Clearly two different personalities in Walt Harrison, your dad. But did you know, like, when we were at Pitt, like, hey, there's this whole other way to do it? Or were you not embedded enough and around coaching enough to know, like, the intricacies of how an elite level program could be run?
There's a couple ways to answer this, and I'm gonna do this as cleanly as I can. There's a bunch of different ways to coach, and there's a bunch of different styles, and the only way to be successful is to be who you are at your core. So for the programs that I may have felt that, I like to do this, or I'd like to try this, for when there isn't cohesion and when there isn't everybody on the same page and trying to do the same thing, the same way, the same goal, that's where teams falter. So whatever the style of coaching that you're involved in, as long as the guys are bought in and there's reason to buy in, you can be successful. It doesn't have to be the way that Pete Carroll does it, or the way that Coach Belichick does it, or anywhere in between. You just need to have buy-in from your staff, from your players, and from the people around you, and then you can be successful. So I may have known of another way to do it, but it didn't matter at the time, because it's what we were doing in that group together in the locker room and in the meetings that mattered. So everything else just falls by the wayside, really. You have to be on the same page with your program, with your leaders, with your coaches, and you can be successful.
Yeah, I'm going to be presumptuous, and I obviously know you extremely well, but I've never asked you this. I feel in football circles, when we walk into the same room, you're the smartest guy in the room. And I've been in a lot of circles with you. I've did a documentary at Miami Hurricanes with you. Obviously was with you at SC, been in Seattle a ton with you guys. Like, and not that anybody else isn't smart. Like, I'm not saying that, but you have this sixth sense around the game, right? You understand what's happening, why it's happening, ways to attack scheme, etc. How have you worked on that? If you think that's even true, if you think you have this elevated acumen, because, Gladwell would say you need 10,000 hours. Like, you grew up and came out of the womb into a football meeting, per se. Your hours are exponential compared to somebody who jumped into it at 25, 30 years old into the craft.
Yeah, the first part of it is definitely not true. There's no way I'm the smartest guy in the room. The way I've been brought up wasn't hit over the head with football. We didn't have, seventh grade, theories on cover three defense, and ways to attack it and ways to enhance it. It was, coach really let me grow up in the systems that I grew up in. And there wasn't there wasn't much more than that. And just like I was telling you before, like, when I got to college and thought I knew what I was doing, I didn't. And then when I got to USC, I knew I didn't know, but I grew up quick, and I kind of felt like I got brought along by some great young coaches, like Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin and even the old wise Carl Tater Smith. All those guys really brought me up and gave me a bunch of different views on it. And that's kind of where I started to learn what I thought I knew was football. And then I had to relearn it the next year, and then go through the next year, and so on and so forth. But it's not something that it was just inherent, or it was something that I was, or born with or, came equipped with. I had to learn it, and and the best part about me, being able to coach couple different positions is that I get a view from the tight end spot, from the receiver position, from the offensive line, protections and pass concepts, and it all goes together. So I think that's really where it's been all tied together, is getting to have all of those different experiences.
Yeah, that's really well said. When you think of your different experiences, and there's so many of them, right? Playing, moving so many times as you did growing up around the craft, playing tight ends, and then all of a sudden you move out to SC and you get named the tight ends coach. And I'm with you. Like, I remember when I was at Pitt, you might not agree with this, but I always felt like I was the smartest receiver to a degree. I was like, I studied the most. I know the game, not in a disparaging way, but I was like, man, I know this game. Like, I know football. And when I came to SC and I walked into the first offensive staff room, they were speaking a completely different language. And I remember driving home with you in Hermosa Beach being like, I don't know a thing. Like I literally thought, and I was told I was a smart guy. Like, Yogi, you play every receiver position. You know every audible and change and sight adjustment. I don't know. I know a damn thing when I went into that. And I say that because then at a young age, you get a room by yourself. It's not like when I was there, I was in rooms with Lane and Sark where if it got off the rails, like, I knew they could help out. Like, when you got thrown into the proverbial deep end with Dominique Byrd, Fred Davis, two huge personalities, let alone the other guys in the rooms. Like, how were you able to, I don't want to say fake it, but how were you able to even survive in that arena at such a young age? It's such a big time program with so many stakes. And, oh, by the way, your dad is the head coach.
I lucked out coaching the position I played. So you can always kind of revert back to what you know. And even today, that'll revert back to when I'm talking through blocking schemes or something like that. I can still always kind of revert back to, home base and what I knew as a player, and what it felt like and those things. But really, you have to be honest with the players, and you have to be straightforward with them, and you need to work through things. And if there's times when you don't know something, it's okay to say, we'll get back to that. Okay, that's a great question. We'll come back to it if we're not 100% sure on things. Hopefully it didn't come up too much, but as long as you're honest with the players and you're not BSing them and telling them one thing and then coming back and going, no, I didn't say that or anything like that. You can usually, you can get through at an early age. Just be really honest. And then you got to study your tail off, and you got to ask the questions that you think they need to know, and just be really curious, and you can work through any things that come up that you're not ready for.
Yeah. It's interesting that, and I talked about it in the open of the show. I think you are one of the guys, and it'll be uncomfortable for you to hear this, but fast tracking, to be a head coach. If you choose to be, you were interviewed for the Hawaii job a year ago. Eventually you didn't get it, but you went through the process, which we'll get to in a minute. But from SC, you go to Premier Program X to the U. And a lot of teams claim the U, but there's really only one team that can claim the U, and that's the University of Miami. And become the recruiting coordinator. Like, you didn't grow up in Miami. You never lived in Miami, to my knowledge. SC recruited nationally, but it's not as though we were pulling tons of players out of that state. How were you able to adjust from huge program to huge program with huge responsibility? Not like, here's your 6 guys that you're coaching. We already recruited. Let's get ready for spring ball.
It's really just comfortable in your own skin, and just like I said before, just being honest and coming from a place of truth and working your tail off to get acclimated to whatever situation you're in. It may not be easy. It may not be what you're used to. It may not be normal, but just find a way to find a way. Just keep working at it until something clicks or something works. And just remember that it always comes back to ball, and it always comes back to, even with the young kids that you're coaching or the areas that you're working in, they all love football, the guys that you're working with, and they want to be great at it. And if you can help them do that, they don't care where you come from. They don't care what your background is, whether good or bad. As long as you're working your tail off to help them, they'll respond, and the coaches will feel that too. So,
I asked that because there's a prevailing thought in major college football, I believe, talking to ADs as they make hires and being in the mix of that, of, can he recruit the area? Does he have relationships in the area? And it sounds like what you're saying is if you can come in and earn the trust of your players, regardless if you come from middle America, the southern part of the States, the Northwest, you live currently in Seattle, it doesn't really matter. And I'm curious for you as a guy who's moved around now, California, Miami, now in Seattle, 3 completely different regions. How do you feel about that when you hear the statement of, well, that coach doesn't have any ties in our neighborhood?
Yeah, I think those bonds in recruiting do need to be nurtured, and they do need to be well regarded. And it starts from a place where you care about the kids, and if they know that you care about the kids, and either we're talking about coaches or parents, if you're going to do whatever you can do to take care of those kids and make sure that they get the best chance to be successful, they'll see that. And if they don't, then they're looking for something else anyway. So you can only do what you can do and what you're used to, but you can also be really open and really curious to where these people are coming from or what they're used to. And if you listen well and you pay attention to what they need and what they're looking for, there'll be great carryover.
Yeah, that's well said. So the league versus college, right? Like I think, I don't know if you and I were this road, but I think back to Pitt and 1 through 85, and I asked Lou this because he works with the football team now. I feel like majority of kids, scholarship student athletes, are like, I'm going to the league. And he's like, yeah, they still feel the same way. And I feel that when I go to every college campus. You made the jump to coaching in the NFL. Like, what is the difference? Like, is it a totally different world? Do you think things translate? Is it just guys that are a couple years older? Same issues, same problems, same concerns? Like, how do you define that?
There's, I totally understand the kids living the dream, man. That's they go to college and they got, whether you call it hoop dreams or whatever it is, but that's what you go to college for. You go to college to get a job, and the coolest one that you can get if you're a college football player is NFL. So they obviously all aspire to that, and you kind of hope they do. You kind of hope they do aspire to be that great and get to that level. It's really hard to do that. It's way easier said than done, way easier dreamed than done. But the difference is college and pros, there's a lot of young guys in the pros too. Like I know we see the ones on ESPN and we see the ones, getting interviewed, but there's a ton of young guys, 22, 23, 24-year-old guys that are working their tail off and are really hungry and are really eager to grow up and develop in the game, that weren't the top draft picks, that weren't, highly regarded free agents, that are guys are just working like crazy to get to their spot. That really is probably a good carryover from college to the guys that really work their tail off and aren't worried about, where they were recruited or how many offers they got and all that. Those guys will probably do really well. The ones that are focused on their goals and the outcome, and not so much the exterior goals of, the fame and the fortune.
How do you feel like social media has played such a role? Because here you are coaching the league, right? Guys are obviously making a ton of money, comparatively, and also on short lists to be a college head coach. And I see what social media does to 14-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds. How do you just feel that? Because you came up in an era with none of it, you coached in an area with none of it, and now you're coaching in an area in an era with a ton of it.
Yeah, I can remember when recruiting changed, when you were allowed to text message on a phone. I know that seems archaic, but the game of the recruiting game changed as soon as that started happening. As soon as you can get instant access to players, it all changed, and it's just our culture, it's our society. So things change with it, and not everybody likes to change, but we all just learn to adapt and go about our business as we know it. What's really hard is it was hard for the kids that were getting recruited before texting and before you could do, you had cell phones and things like that. So it's all just adapting with the time, and it's difficult. I'm scared to death. Like I have an 11-year-old that, is kind of looking around like, can I do some social media stuff? And I'm shaking my head. Absolutely not. You don't need to do it right now. So I know I want to protect my own kids from it. And really, when they are responsible enough and mature enough to handle it, and they've decided that they want to protect themselves and their team and their family from, saying things that they shouldn't say, then they'll do a really good job with it. And when it becomes just like a fun side game, like you're playing a game on your phone, what social media can turn into, that's when things can, go the wrong way. And kids can make mistakes and make decisions that can have a huge negative effect, on their futures. So I think it would be great to keep educating them and do as best you can to make sure that those kids know the consequences of being on social media.
Yeah, no, I just think it's an interesting time. Like here we are in the middle of COVID-19. Obviously, everybody's physical health is a big deal, but in the college circle, it's so much mental health because of time away from their campus, things that they're dealing with. Everybody has different scenarios, as you know better than anybody at home. And I wonder, like, when we look back on this, like, what will social interaction digitally have done for this time? It's done some great things, right? Because you and I can Zoom and catch up. It may also do some unfortunate things. I'm not really sure, but it's definitely interesting, I think, for you as we weave your story back and forth. Coach tight ends, you coach wide receivers. You're now the run game coordinator in Seattle. Like, offensively, like, how do you describe your overarching approach to that side of the ball, having coached so many positions? And I think from the outsiders, like, it's like, yeah, okay, everybody knows a little bit about everything, but when you're in it, like, those are three different languages that you had to master, and you've done that over the course of 20 years coaching ball. So yeah, your offensive approach based on what you've learned, be curious what you think it is.
It's always been about balance. My philosophy is as a coach, when I'm coaching players, it's always play fast, play hard, and finish. And that's always the overarching aggressive, style that I like to live in. But truly being balanced and not giving away tell on what you're doing offensively or giving the defense any clues of what's going on. As long as you can keep them guessing and keep them on their toes, and mix the run and the pass and the screens and the play actions, and as long as you can keep mixing that, it's at this level. I know sometimes in the college level, it's got to be a little bit more fast paced, and it's got to be it's got to be spread out more than it is at this level. But there's room for that on at the NFL too. So it's always staying balanced, and don't ever get stuck in your ways about this is the only way to do it, and keep learning and keep creating and keep finding new ways to either do old things or find new things that you can marry up with what you're used to. So, but always coming back to finding a balance and know where that balance is, where your home base is.
Yeah, it's been interesting to watch offensive football change so many different ways, but I really think at the end of the day, and I want to know if you agree with this, when you can marry up run game, pass game, like a clinic with Sean McVay, who you know their system better than I do because you watch the film. Watch the Niners. They can marry up their play action game with their run game. I just feel like that is still, even Stanford at times, they're probably the best job of it, anybody regarding the teams that I cover. It just seems like that gives you the most consistent approach to winning big and manipulating an opponent versus running, playing catch is what I call it sometimes. Versus, playing quarterback.
For sure. Those guys have been really successful, and you need really good players to do it too. As much as we love to, say that, well, the coaches can handle this, we need really good players, and we need guys that really bought into the system and guys that are versatile. Guys can do more than one thing. But it always comes back to not hindering those guys and giving those guys the best chance to excel. And when you're not giving the defense a chance to zero in on one player or one scheme or one concept, that it gives them the most problems. It gives you the best chance to be successful.
Coaching tree is a phrase often thrown around in football, right? Like everybody gets hired and the first thing on the bio page is like the tree they come from. I'd be curious, like you have a lot of branches on your tree, right? You reference Stark and Lane. You look at the coordinators that have been in Seattle, right? Darrell Bevell, like you guys went to 2 Super Bowls, right? Now with Coach Schottenheimer, another guy, you've been around Jed Fish in Miami, and obviously your dad. when you look at your tree, I don't know if you ever have, like, have you ever thought of like, man, this is an interesting palette of offensive minds, let alone some of the O-line coaches you've been around?
Yeah, getting to work with I've been extremely fortunate. I don't see it in any other way, but I've got to be with some just great minds and great personalities and great humans. And from like Kennedy Polamalu back at USC, we got to catch up at the combine this year, to all the way to Art Kehoe at Miami. It was just a pleasure getting to learn from him and being around him. I've been really lucky, and it's been a very diverse group. And all the guys that I've got to work with, I feel fortunate to take things from them and learn from them and grow with them. So it's been a blast, and I'm just really fortunate.
Yeah. I mean, you're also the son of a coach who's, I think, is a Hall of Famer. And I think his football acumen is way overshadowed by everything he does off the field. He's got such a great personality, and he's fun loving, and he's fun on the media. Take us inside there. Like, where have you really gleaned insights from your dad in your life? And maybe it's not on the football field.
Yeah, we've done football wise to start with. I think the thing that I've been most fortunate to be around is just being a sounding board for him. Just as he's got to make tough decisions and like throughout the years. So I really feel like I've been able to be around that and having the having to answer the tough questions about what do you do with your roster this year, or what about in recruiting, what's most important, or who do we need to be going after and building a team and things like that. So being around that and getting to deal with even though sometimes there are problems that come up, but they're great learning tools and learning experiences. So that's where I feel I've been really fortunate, is that I've been able to be around that and having to see those difficult decisions get made and the process to go through those.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I talk to ADs, it's all about, to me, like, when has a prospective head coach been in critical moments? Like in quarterback play, I always call it, as a broadcaster, pace, plays after critical errors. Like, what does the guy do on the next drive after a pick or after a poor decision? How many of those reps does he have, right? I'm sure you evaluate that way to a certain degree of like, what do guys do in the red zone or on third down? What plays do they make as you're evaluating them, in the draft or in free agency? And I think in coaching, how many like heated moments have you been in? Not like heated at your throat, but in like, hey, the program is going to go one way or the other. Like, when you think back to some of those for you, do you think of like 3 or 4? Or are you like, man, there's been like hundreds of those moments where I've had to be in a high stakes environment and help make a decision?
Yeah. The best part about football and the worst part about football is that those happen every game. Sometimes it feels like every drive. It's like you're in it. What are they going to call? What are you going to call? And what's the next step? What's going to happen? Yeah, there have been some, in the championship games, things like that, where you feel like this is, it may seem like more, but going through it and treating all the games the same is the best way to really combat any negative thoughts that may come into your head. Whether you're playing, a FCS team for your first game in college, or you're starting off playing your division rival in the pros, or you're playing a playoff game. If you treat them all the same, it's your best chance to not mess it up and make it too big, or let the situation be bigger than what it needs to be, which is call the next play, get the next guy in there. Let's go. It's really a next play mentality. So if something bad happens, whether they intercept the ball, run it back for touchdown, or you didn't convert on third down or whatever, just go to the next play. Go to the next play. Go to the next play.
Speaking of the next play, I only ask questions on this podcast I don't know the answer to, BC. That's the only rule that I have. And I'm curious for you, because I think your next play is a head coach in college football. And maybe it's bigger than that. But if it is that, have you thought about, as our dog barks in the background, have you thought about like the first meeting you would have with a team standing in front of 105 guys and delivering the message of how you're going to lead them to some sort of success?
Yeah, that type of situation is the exciting one. It's the same one on a smaller scale that you have when you first time you walk into your position room, or you walk in front of the offense, or you speak in front of the team for a learning session or something like that. All of those meetings have been built up kind of in my mind just throughout the coaching career. It's just learning those situations and going back to being yourself and being who you are at your heart, at your core. So as long as you're yourself, those things always work themselves out the right way.
But how hard is that? Like,
system.
Yeah, I'm with you. But I feel like in coaching, we saw it firsthand, and I think most first-time head coaches struggle with being themselves because it's a new environment. I mean, I remember Lane when he went to the Raiders, and I remember Chris McFoy, who was a receiver at SC. He called me because he was with the Raiders. I think he was a free agent, a late pick. And he goes, man, he said everything that Pete said, as in what Coach Carroll said in the first meeting. And Lane would admit that, right? First time out of the gate. So, for you, because you've been in this really cool ecosystem where, like, again, you might be uncomfortable with me saying it, but I feel like you've been trained for these moments. Right? Your dad is such an orchestrator of being able to do that, right? He's that guy at the top, and he's kind of piecing everything together, and he knows when he's putting you in front of the room what he's doing and the moments you're in. So how hard is that? Because you have said just be yourself like 6 or 7 times, but when I see head coaches, I feel like that's the hardest thing to do when they become the head coach.
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have a lot of philosophical views that marry with where I am right now in Seattle and where we were at USC. And really just being able to live in that environment to where it is like second nature to me going forward. So I can totally see where guys who come up in different programs are going to carry over from what their head coach had philosophically, because it will fill in a couple spaces here and there when questions come up. Go back to the philosophy. This is kind of a situation I wasn't sure about. Okay, let's just go back to the philosophy. Go back. What's their home base and where they've grown up and what they've seen coaches have seen be successful. That's what they'll revert back to most times, I would say.
Yeah, I love that. I can remember even at the reigning coach of the year,
Coach Baby.
Yeah, when he was at Ole Miss, he tried to be Pete, and then he got his other chance, and he's been unapologetically himself. And look at what has happened. And I feel like as though you're going to be able to not skip the step, but like work through the stage of who am I, what am I about when you get that opportunity to be a head coach versus coaches dealing with in real time.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be things that, even though I feel like I'm really prepared for, are going to be, going to be bumps in the road. They're going to be things I'm not as prepared for as I thought I was going to be. But then to get back to what you really truly believe in. I know Coach Bebe is living the Coach Orgeron life right now. Like he's getting to be him. And there's not a better way to coach, I think, is to truly get to be yourself and who you feel comfortable being. So I'm excited for him too. Coach O, he was fantastic at that scene, man.
He was fantastic. Okay. Before we let you go, look back on your career at Pitt. BC 23. I can remember the jersey. I might even have one, I feel like, in my closet right now. But that being said, what's something that you learned in college that you look back on now and you're like, yeah, that really helped me out in my life now. But at the time, like, there was no chance that I saw that lesson.
Yeah. Okay. This is, I tell this kind of, it's a story, but it's just kind of something that happened in a game one time. And at the time I didn't understand it. And then being able to be a coach now, totally, this made sense too. So being a backup player is, Yogi, you weren't for very long. You got a lot of big time plays, but you were a backup player for a period of time. You may not get all the reps in practice that you wanted to, or coaches didn't get me in for this one, or I didn't get to do this play, or and so there was one time I got in a game and I got asked to do something, block a pass protection that I didn't get very many reps in practice that week. And I got an argument with my coach about, I didn't get those reps. And at the time I felt like, I got put in a bad situation. And looking back at it, I was so immature in that I have to take control of my reality. I have to take control of what happens to me, where I could have spent another half hour after practice working on that. And what it really comes down to is controlling what you can control and being ready for the situation that you get placed into or it comes up in your life, and doing as much as you can to not have to make excuses and only take yourself to blame, really. So I didn't get it when I was 20 or 21 at the time. It made so much sense to me. Like 2 years into coaching, I was like, oh, I was such an idiot for thinking that way. And I'm so glad I don't have to think like that way anymore. Like, I'm going to take control of whatever the next situation is, whether it be a new coaching job or a new position or whatever it is. It's, okay, I'm going to get ready for that. And there's nothing that's going to stop me from being prepared for whatever comes up to the best of what I can guess is going to show. So, so that was the one. It didn't happen during college, but it happened clear after. And I feel bad for all the coaches that have had to go through those situations and all the players that have to go through that. And that's why I want to protect my guys from having to feel that way. Like, I'm the backup guard and, I didn't get many reps, or I'm the backup tackle and I got to go play guard. And am I ready for that? Okay. Did I get enough practice time? I'm not going to let the situation dictate my reality. I'm going to dictate it and have control.
All right. So speaking of reality, like, how are you doing? You guys are kind of not in ground zero, but of like the first place that COVID-19 really hit.
Yeah.
The Seahawks run that city. The draft is coming up. Like, how is first your family? And we talk all the time, so I know how you're doing, but I'm sure the listeners were curious. And then how are you operating as a coach with the draft only weeks away?
I don't want to, it's been really tough on everybody. Initially, it was really hard because obviously no one knew how to prepare for this. It did show up a lot in nearby city of Kirkland, just 2 towns away from us. And a lot of our schools, a lot of our school districts were very aware of what was going on. And we knew that there was cases kind of popping up around us. But that was early on in the process. So I feel like we were prepared for just to kind of be ready for the next situation that could arise. So we've kind of been in quarantine. We've all been really aware of, staying clean and making sure we're not in situations where, people can pass things along. So for coaching wise, we've been doing Zoom meetings, just like we're doing here. And it's worked really well. It was weird for like a half hour, and then it worked itself out. It's just coaching ball, and we're getting to go through all of our cut-ups and all of our college scouting and everything that we got to do just to get ready for the draft and all that. So we can stay in great communication. The next challenge will be when we can communicate with the players in a couple of weeks here, as long as there aren't any changes. And we'll probably go to a lot of the same thing we're doing right now with these Zoom meetings or FaceTimes or however you got to get. I don't know if I'm branding the right companies right now for your sponsorship, whatever means that we can use to get it done. So it's a different time and it's crazy, and we just got to be really mindful of what's going on around us and making sure we're taking care of others and doing a good job. Not being a reason to spread this thing any further.
Yeah, I agree with that. So coaches, you're always working on yourselves, right? You got your philosophy, you got a million notepads. Like, my wife clowns me all the time because I got a whole case of stuff, and I only did it for 4 years. So for you in this time, yeah, you can get to that comment. I feel one comment about all my pack route football stuff. But I want to ask you, like, where are you finding greater meaning in your profession among this, right? Like, everybody breaks down family, right? And every football program in the history of the world, from Pop Warner to probably the NFL, to a certain degree, you talk about a quote unquote, we're a family or whatever it is. You're spending time with like your literal family, more time than you ever could as a coach, due to being fit, and maybe ever will. So how do you think it's going to affect you as you move into a new world once we come out of this?
So my personal kind of feelings on it are, I'm going to take this as a really weird gift that I get to be around my kids. I know there's a lot of people in really rough situations and going through some really tough things right now. But if I'm going to look at the positive side, like I'm going to try to, I'm going to be around my family and get to love them up as much as I can while we have this time. And when we're back, it'll just be a weird time in history that I got to be around them. It won't be like this again until I retire. So it's a great time just to really reconnect with your family. Take care of your life stuff. Like, hey, let's go fill out the census. Let's go get our taxes in. Let's do all those things that sometimes but hey, make the best of the situation is what you can. I know it's not easy for a ton of families and a ton of people in healthcare, and it can't be a worse situation. And you got to have regard for that and understand what people are going through, and then find the silver linings that you can.
Yeah, well said. So there's a lot of high school athletes that listen to this, and they're going to want to ask you this, so I'm going to ask it for them. Mm. You've been around some great players, Brennan, Reggie Bush, Lindale. You coach a Mackey Award winner, Fred Davis, Leinart, Booty, Sanchez. That's just at SC. Miami has its list of players. Seattle, of course, Russell Wilson, Marshawn Lynch. I mean, the Legion of Boom. There's a lot of talented player. What, if there is, a commonality or a story that you can share about a red thread that cuts through how they practice?
Yeah, I think it's almost a professionalism about them. The ones that really truly make it, we didn't get to, I didn't get to. You got to play with Larry a couple years at Pitt. I missed him by about 6 months. But the guys who are really treat the game with a sense of professionalism and a sense of regard, and they really, really care about what they're doing. And it's not, it's a fun game. It's a blast, but it has to be more than that. And it has to be like the kind of fun activity you're doing at the time. It's gotta be more. And to those guys who really treat it like that, obviously they have to be super talented if they want to be, regarded in that light. But the ones that can put both of those two things together, that gives you the best shot. All right. So last question, best practice story you have of a player is what? You want like a serious football story, or you want it like the one that's back in the SC days when we faked throwing Lindale White off of a building?
Yeah, you could find that one on YouTube. That was hilarious.
Sure, you can.
That's like on the eve of April Fools, right? Your dad, the ultimate prankster in that regard. But no, I want to know, like, you were there with Troy Polamalu, Brian Cushing. I mean, I didn't even reference any defensive players, but so many guys now, like, I always say they love what football does for them, which is like Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And some love like what they could do for the game. And like, I think if I was going to answer that, I'd be like Reggie Bush and Christian McCaffrey and Larry Fitzgerald, by far the three best practice players ever saw with my own eyes, right? Larry was a freak. Christian reminded me of Reggie, the way he finished. And Reggie, I never saw anybody work like that daily. I'm talking just in outside zone runs, stretch drills. It was a different level. So for you, almost 20 years now in the profession, is there one that stands out?
To really go back to those first, I think it was the second year at SC, when I think Reggie, Lindale were just getting there, and the crew before of Mike Williams and his class. Those two classes back to back were phenomenal. We're just loaded with talented players and guys that could do all types of stuff. But I think it was somewhere in probably training camp when Reggie and Lindale and I believe it was Chauncey, those guys were running through a practice, and I can remember those guys competing like their life was on the line, and they're competing, and it wasn't just for that; they're really competing for respect, just to earn their place. And there were just some fantastic battles with a lot of words I probably can't repeat on this G-rated podcast. But just some great battles with guys not backing down, wanting to prove to the people that they were playing with that they deserved respect and that they were going to work their tails off to earn it through their play, not just the way they talked. And so that was early on. That one kind of moved me a little bit, and it kind of felt like this is something special.
Yeah, that's so well said. It's like the great ones, I feel like they don't know how to turn it on and off. You know, I can remember your dad used a phrase. He would say, "You're either competing or you're not," and that stuck with me as like a 20-something-year-old kid. Yeah, like you're either rolling or you're not, dude. Like you can't turn it on Saturday because if you were Lendell and you didn't want to turn it on Tuesday, Reggie would. I mean, if Reggie didn't, Chauncey would. To your point of just the running back group, and I felt that was where like the great ones. I think there's a commonality, and man, you've seen so many. So thank you, man. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, Yogs, love you, kid.
I love you too. That's Brennan Carroll.
Huh?
What's that?
You guys hold it down over there, huh?
Yeah, we're gonna try for sure. All right, everybody can talk now at my house, so they'll be happy. But that's Brennan Carroll. I'm Yogi Roth. It's the Yogi Roth Show. Check it out wherever you listen to your podcast. We're now on YouTube as well. There's a bunch of cool videos there and clips. And if you want the newsletter, just go to yogiroth.com. Every week, it's been fun hearing from you guys and what you've liked. We got a nice little community there. So hit me up. And BC, thanks for coming on. I'm Yogi Roth. Peace.